Well, welcome, Patriots, to the first stream of the Australian Patriot Streetfighter. Firstly, I want to thank you, Patriots. We've stormed to well over 100 members since we launched this group a little over a week ago, and I marvel at that. It would simply not have been possible prior to COVID. The amount of people that are waking up to the scumbags in power, those who believe that we the people are their slaves and puppets, that we're dispensable pawns to be moved to further their own agenda, their depopulation plans, and maintaining their control of the people. It's just wonderful to see that people are opening their eyes, especially in Australia. We tend to have this attitude and apathy of she'll be right, mate, and sit back and let others do the fighting and not get involved themselves. So to see that many new members, I don't know that they're all in Australia, but plenty of them are, who have joined. I just want to say thank you so much. The purpose of this channel is to give everybody the opportunity to have their voice heard, to be able to have access to information on what is going on both in Australia and around the world in this fight back against those that would seek to squash the people, to have them under control and to lie to them, all in order to carry out their plans. I want to give a shout out to Scott Mackay. Brother, thank you so much for the work that you do for getting into the fight. There's people that, I know there's people around that criticize Scott and make all sorts of claims that he's in it for the money or for himself. But look, I want to say back to you, Scott didn't have to do any of this. He spends his time fighting, making himself available for you, he's got into the fight. He's exposing the scumbags around and not sitting back and letting others do it. Most of those that do the criticizing, what are you doing yourself? Apart from being a keyboard warrior or just sitting back and being critical? Are you actually getting into your communities? Are you letterbox dropping? Are you getting involved in your local councils or government? How are you involved? So before you criticize, I would suggest to take the speck out of your own eye. Scott, you've been an inspiration to so many in getting involved in not just sitting back and taking the easy road and letting others do the fight, but actually taking action, whether it's setting up a stream like this for a new group, whether it's actually getting out there into school boards and speaking up and overthrowing those that are corrupting the minds of our children, whether it's actually putting yourself forward to become elected to office where you can make a difference and make a stand, whether it's just speaking to people and making them aware, not just through forums like this, but personally one-on-one. So Scott, thank you. You're the inspiration behind setting up what I would call almost a local branch of the Streetfighter brand here in Australia. And I just hope and pray that it can be successful in opening the eyes of the people here in Australia as much as you've done over there, not just in the States, but around the world. Australia and the US have a long history of standing together, fighting side by side. Actually, if we cast our minds back to the Second World War, on the 3rd of September, 1939, then Prime Minister Sir Robert Gordon Menzies made this statement. He said, "Fellow Australians, it is my melancholy duty to inform you officially that in consequence of the persistence of Germany in her invasion of Poland, Great Britain has declared war upon her, and that as a result, Australia is also at war." Well, the year is 2021 and Australians are part of a new and much bigger war, a war against the deep state, a war against the powers of tyranny that would seek to strip from us the very freedoms that our brave men and women fought and died so hard for in the years following Menzies' announcement. And throughout the 20th century, we've always stood up shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with our American brothers and sisters from the fields of Europe in World War I to the fields of Europe and the Pacific in World War II, to Korea and Vietnam and the Middle East. In fact, the first time Australian forces fought alongside American troops was way back in World War I at the famous and pivotal Battle of La Hamel during June of 1918 in France. And 10 companies of the 33rd American National Guard Division had been training with the Australian Corps for several weeks, and 4 American companies went into the Battle of La Hamel on the morning of the 4th of July. It was the first time that Australians and Americans had fought together in the First World War. One of the officers after the battle had this to say: "We have never fought as quite so integrated a fighting force as on this occasion, and both sides saw each other as brothers in arms." Well, American brothers and sisters and patriots, we stand with you now as we stood with you then. And I pray and hope that you would also stand with us, the Australian patriots, as we also dig into the same fight, shoulder by shoulder with you. With regard to my own background, well, my name is Troy Gehry. I've always, for a long time, had an interest in world events, particularly as a Christian. As I see and have seen the events in the world unfolding, very much in a way that aligns with what the Bible itself predicted thousands of years ago through both the Old Testament prophets and Jesus in the New Testament. In fact, it was prophesied that there would come a time where men would call what is good evil and would call what is evil good. And if you look around in the world around you today, you see this very thing unfurling before our very eyes, whether it's calling the vaccine good when it's in fact evil, whether it's calling men in public office that portray a facade of being good but are in fact evil, whether it's that the plans that they have for us are plans for our good, for our health and our safety, when in fact they're evil, whether it's looking at the way that the family is being destroyed in the name of LGBTQ rights, proclaiming it as a good lifestyle, as a healthy and equally valid lifestyle, when in fact it is destructive to our families, as they push it to our children, destructive to our children's minds. Previously, I have run for public office in Australia when the Family First Party was going. It did join with Corey Bernardi's Conservatives Party at one point until that was disbanded. The problem with Australia, of course, is, as with most places in the world, the cabal, the Gazarian cabal is in power. They determine who gets into office in Australia. For a long time now, it's simply been Liberal or Labor, with barely a difference between them in these days. Many would say the same about the Democrats and the Republicans in America. If I vote over here for a candidate that's not Liberal or Labor, because of the preferential voting system, ultimately my vote ends up with either Liberal or Labor anyway. I have to number them in preference from 1 to 8. If my top choice gets knocked out, the votes go to my second candidate. When the second candidate's knocked out, to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on until it goes to somebody who's not knocked out. So my Australian patriots would know that. So that's more information for the American patriots that are wondering how the system works over here. So we're really locked between a bad choice and a bad choice. In terms of when I really became aware of, I suppose, those that are pulling strings and then their nefarious intent, that something really is wrong in this world, was probably around the time that the whole Benghazi episode unfolded. The excuse that was given, that it was due to a Muslim cartoon or something mocking Muhammad that was on YouTube, that suddenly despite there being plenty of similar types of videos on YouTube all around that time, and that this one, this one particular one would suddenly cause so much offence that the whole of Libya would erupt and attack the American base just seemed absolutely absurd. They kept changing their story. They did not look credible, and so I knew something was terribly wrong. And since that time, I've gone down many rabbit holes on who really is in power, the families that are in power, how long that they've been doing these things for. It goes back a very, very long time. In fact, really not just this century or the century before, but it can be tracked before the key families like the Rockefellers and so on. I suppose to swing to a few other things, some of the major events that have taken place over the last week that are worth just keeping our eye on and asking questions, digging a little bit. So some of the things that come to my mind, over the past week in multiple cities around the world, the EBS warning systems were played in a mock or trial event here in Melbourne. It occurred as well. It occurred in other cities around the world, in America, in fact, also in the US. As you guys over in America would know, you had Black Hawks landing in the capital, as again in some sort of a mock event. In fact, I've got a video or a film that I can briefly play in a minute of the Melbourne one. But I would submit that in all likelihood, these were a coordinated test, because they will be utilised, I would think, in a major false flag event very soon. You have to ask yourself the question, why were they done around the same time in cities all around the world at the same time? They could happen at any time throughout the course of the year, yet it all happened together. So the question is, what are they planning for? Why are they testing their systems now? There are some options that I will talk about in a minute. So two that come to mind would be an actual cyber attack. It's something that is called unconventional warfare. We know recently there was an announcement from the chief energy minister in the United States that the power grid was vulnerable to attack. It's interesting that it just is announced in the news around the time that the EBS tests are going on. Is there collusion, or is there a link between the two? I can't say for sure, but it's certainly something worth keeping our eye on. We also know that back in around 2015 or 2016, a mock attack was done on the US energy grid to look for vulnerabilities. And interestingly, under Obama at the time, so it must have been in 2015, so under Obama at the time, they actually allowed the Chinese and the Russians to participate in this mock attack, exposing the vulnerabilities of the US grid to foreign entities. Really is an act of betrayal and treason in and of itself. Obama should be arrested just for that reason alone. So the fact is that not only is the grid vulnerable, but those that would have a motivation to take it down and attack it are aware of those vulnerabilities. Now, some of you would have seen a few posts that I put on related to Project Bluebeam. If you don't know what that is, it's holographic technology that's well advanced, far and above what you would have seen in the mainstream media. So much so that if it was to appear before you, you would be completely fooled. You would think that what you were seeing was real, when in fact it was just a holographic projection. There's a couple of, again, videos that I posted that show what that technology would look like. There was also an interview with a CIA operative that I posted on the channel that exposed, I suppose, in an interview just before his death, that there was a plan by 2024 to launch a fake alien invasion on this planet. Using the blue beam technology, he was seconded into an above top secret program where he was hired or employed as an assassin, exposed to some of the top programs of the government. And this was one, with its purpose being to unite the world together in response to an external threat, which is in fact a fake event, and then bring the world together under a global leadership or global order, if you like, and to control the people, to force digital IDs upon everybody, to force everybody to swear allegiance to that global entity, that global power, and to give up their rights and their liberties, and be under complete totalitarian control, where martial law is declared on a global scale, almost on a permanent basis, because of this supposed external threat. There's also some clips, again, I think I did post them on the channel, where it shows a number of US presidents talking about, and this all comes down to the preconditioning. So it's where you release things into the public arena on an ongoing basis, getting people used to planting the seed of ideas and getting people used to a concept, preconditioning them. So we go back to President Ronald Reagan. There's a clip of him before Congress talking about, wouldn't it be, isn't it interesting how quick people would put aside their differences, or nations would put aside their differences if faced with a common external threat from an alien invasion, and these things which we think are so important would be seen as petty, these differences that would be put aside, and that the world would unite together against a common foe. And similar type of sentiments were expressed by Clinton, by Barack Obama, all talking about this external alien threat that would bring the world together. So these are things to keep an eye out for. They are reasons why EBS tests might have taken place around the world, getting ready for a false fake flag, whether that be a blue beam type false alien invasion. And in another episode, I'll talk about how that lines up with what the Bible talks about as a great deception that will come upon the whole world. And the majority of people will fall for it. People whose eyes are closed, who just accept everything that they're told by the mainstream media, by the government, by health officials, and never question it. Their head is in the sand, like a number of us have discussed in the chat. So look, for this week, I've probably spoken long enough. So again, thank you all very much for joining the channel. Look forward to many more updates with you, bringing information to you that's relevant, that's going to keep you aware of what's going on in the world, the things that the mainstream media won't tell you or that they'll lie about, so that we're aware of what we're dealing with, what we're confronted with. And most of all, I encourage you to keep participating, participate in the chat, find things of interest that it's going to be informative for the rest of the group, and get involved. Hopefully in future, we can make flyers and other things available that people can print off, letterbox, or put posters up in the community. People are starting to wake up, and people are starting to read things and question. So now is a prime opportunity to take things out to other people, and to just be getting involved, not sit back, not expect everybody else to do things for you, and just sit back and be the recipient or beneficiary of things, but to be the one that makes a difference. So thank you, Patriots. I'll speak to you again probably in about a week's time from today. So signing off here from Australia, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.